Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to help transform relationships to love and life. So I have so many questions. In fact, I have so many questions and I'm so grateful for them that I still haven't quite compiled them all for today's chat. But I want to say that you're more than welcome to put in the live chat a question. I will do my best to answer it this week. If I don't get to it, I'll answer it next week. I also recognize that a lot of you don't necessarily want to be known and you want to remain anonymous. So no problem. Come over to my Facebook page, Beth Bell Live. Come to my Instagram account at Queen Bliss B. Private message me. I'm happy to take the questions there if you want to remain anonymous. Maybe your YouTube channel has your name in it and you just don't want to ask the question in the chat. But if you don't mind and you don't care, please put the chat right here in YouTube Live. So I'm super happy you're here. If you're on replay, the same applies. Please give me all your questions and I'm happy to do my very best to answer. So today we're going to jump in with several questions and they're all good ones. And I think they apply to so many of us in so many ways. Okay, so here's the question. It's a little bit long and I'm going to probably take it in chunks just to try to make sure that I cover off on everything here. Okay. Oops. Okay. So I want to know what's happening more clearly. There is a typical communication pattern with a person I dated about 10 years back. Looking back on this, I felt so invisible and abused when I was with him. I accepted the fact that we are not compatible and things got easier, and I was able to move on without having resentment. We still talk as friends, but I realize there is a trigger. I just wanted to know what is happening in me as this pattern seems to repeat. Well, without feeling a whole lot into it, I'll tell you what comes to mind right away. And that is that there's a self-worth issue here for you. As we ascend, we want to attract people who are on a similar vibration or who can respect us for where we are. And just, again, not going deep into this, the words that are written here, what came forward is that there's something that you need to get a little bit deeper into about yourself and how you are allowing other people to take your power away. So it's a self-worth thing. It doesn't mean that you don't think that you're great and wonderful. I'm saying there's a thread in there. There's something that needs to get pulled. I like to call them the invisible stitches, right? The thread that's holding an attraction to something that we don't want, but we don't know exactly why or how. So I think the other thing that, as I dig a little bit into the question, is I felt so invisible and abused. Well, girlfriend, get the hell out. If someone is not going to see you for who you are, you got to nip that right away in the bud and get out. There is no time, no space for relationships anymore. If someone doesn't see you and they don't appreciate you and they don't respect you, get out. I wouldn't even spend the time to go back to this individual. I probably wouldn't even spend the time to communicate with them. I know that may sound harsh, and I'm sure there's a lot more to this particular person in question and history, but we really need to keep ascending, shining our light and showing the way, and staying with people who don't get us and people who want to pull us down is not where we need to go. So a little bit of tough love there, but I would move on. I wouldn't even entertain what this individual has to say. It just feels that there's a real big vibrational difference here. And then I accepted the fact that we are not compatible. Why would we accept that? And things got easier. Well, of course they did, because you gave your power away and they were in control. And I was able to move on without having resentment. I don't believe it. Whenever we give away our power and our control, we always have resentment deep down inside, unless we've forgiven them, thanked them with gratitude for the lessons that they brought forth to us, then we can move on. Otherwise, there's always, maybe the word isn't resentment, maybe it's some other vibration, but there's always something deep inside. If we don't really, really untangle and dismantle the cords that connect us to previous lovers, friends, family members, you're always going to be entangled. So Do the work to do the untangling. I appreciate that you want to know what is happening in me as this pattern seems to repeat. And that's why I call it an invisible thread. All these patterns that we don't want, just get in there, get deep in there and figure that one out, because this guy is not worth your time. I'm sorry. He's not. Get the lesson, get out. Sounds like you're there, but now you just need to do a little bit of touch up on really cutting the cord so you don't feel that emotional heart tug back to them. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Life quandary. I like these. I need income. I am grateful to be married and have financial security, but I miss working in the office. I also have a side hustle that pays my little bills and have been focused on that, but it cannot support my dreams of college savings and travel. I lack focus in the job hunt. Plus, I'm scared because all the resumes I have sent over the past 3 months have been rejected. Well, I'm going to actually, because I just say what comes to me. And as you may all know, that I channel these responses. And I believe that I'm working with your higher self and with the collective consciousness in bringing and shining light on these types of situations, because we all have some of these situations in our lives at some point in time. So what comes to me is actually an Abraham Hicks video that I absolutely love. And she talks about, I don't remember the name of it, but she talks about how applying for jobs, you're going to be one of thousands of other people. Look, I know sometimes we have to do that. We have to take that course. But what's so much more important, especially if you have skill sets, especially if you're someone that's not fresh out of high school or college or something, and you don't have, any tangible skills, and you're just like, don't know, well, you might have to go and apply for a job. But even then, what I'm going to say next applies. That it's so much more important to feel into, what do I love to do? What are my strengths? What am I good at? And then put that out into the universe. I like to do it in a journal. I like to feel into the energy of how I would feel. One of the things I love to do is to contribute to humanity. I love to help other people with their questions and quandaries. I love to help shine the light. So that's always in my, if you want to call it a vision board, you want to call it my, my vortex that I put out there, it's always going to be around that feeling of being grateful to be able to be in front of others and help them, because it helps me. And when we help each other, we're always going to proliferate this emanation of love and light that humanity needs so much right now. So I would say that stop applying for jobs. I know that sounds really bad, and maybe you need to, and you can keep doing that if your mind isn't going to adjust enough to do what I'm going to say next. But feel into what you really, really love and be in contact and connection with people in those circles. And I know how hard that is. People have given me that advice before, but it really does work. And sometimes we end up giving to get, meaning we give our time to something and we don't know how we're going to get something from it, but we don't do it because we're going to get something. We do it because we believe in whatever the project is. It might be donation for a nonprofit. It might be using your skill sets and donating your time on a new project, a new business, a new company, and you're not really sure. There's no roles, there's no descriptions, there's no income coming from it immediately. Feel into if your skill sets fit and if there's potential for it to grow, right? So if you're like, yeah, I know it's going to be just like a complete waste of my time, then don't do it. But if you feel into it and you really feel into what are my skill sets, what do I want to feel in the end? I want to feel a contribution. That's always one of my feelings. I want to feel like I'm in connection with others. That's really important to me. So come up with those feeling words of how you want to feel afterwards. Maybe it is that you just want to feel rich. You just want to feel money rich. And that's going to be a different thing that you're going to attract because people are going to bring it to you. My corporate career, I did interview for my first job when I worked in big pharma. And I did like the typical, like put your resume out there and get the jobs. And from that point forward, I interviewed within my company, but it was because opportunities came to me. They came to me because I was doing what I loved and because I had skill sets that other people saw in me and they offered me these incredible opportunities to do incredible positions. My last position I absolutely loved, which was moving to Singapore and working in women's health. So we never quite know. I never had that on my radar. I was never thinking, oh, I want to move to Singapore. But the universe had me, and my higher self had me, and I had that opportunity that came to me just out of the blue. If I had applied to that opportunity with hundreds of other people, the chances of me getting it, even though I was completely qualified, probably would have been less. So take the less traditional route. Look, if you need to put out the resumes to satisfy the husband or your own personal guilt system, do it. But I do think that if you get really 100% in your energy and your value and worth of what you bring, reach out to some of your connections, go do those coffees, have a sip of something with someone, do that in networking and put it out there, not from desperation, but just from, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I love to do. This is what I'm good at. Just putting it out there. I've got lots of things in the works and just want to have as many options as possible to contribute and see what comes back to you. So it is a different way of looking at it. You can do both if you want, but if you put 100% into really putting it out there to be seen and have value, and share your value, it will come. It's just the law of attraction. All right, let's go to the next question. This question is, my boyfriend becomes distant at times, and when we talk, it feels like we can be good friends, but when I spend a little too much time talking to him, he tries to get back. I think that means get back together. Then he becomes distant again. He asks just to ask, sometimes the same thing again and again. It makes me think he never cared to remember anything I said. He always asks my opinions a lot, but always finds some point to argue back, and I hardly feel appreciated. Well, again, I would say that this is very similar to the first question and the first person's situation, in that you want to be heard. That's why we're in relationship, is to be heard, to be seen, and to see others. And so if you're putting out more than they are, then, and I'm not saying this is like a tit for tat, I'm saying this is like just real relationship core stuff. We give and receive, and that the beauty of that is when it's similar in its intensity, that not one person is just giving or not one person is just receiving. Sounds like there's an imbalance here. With that said, I will say that, as we know, men and women, very different communication styles. So if you're expecting the man to listen to all of our, I'm just going to say typically women's, blah, 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 blah. I'm a long storyteller. I know it. I love it about myself, and my girlfriends love it, but my guy friends not as much. So we do have to honor that the way that men process information is very different. And sometimes their listening ability is also not as great, because honestly, they do not care about all the details. They don't care about all the shades of gray. And that's beautiful in some ways, right? Because if everybody talked in, the long storytelling ways that a lot of women, again, stereotypically saying, talk, we probably wouldn't get through a lot of things and get things done. And, it's like men have this beautiful ability to cut to the solution and provide options. And so we need to love them for their strengths and what they can help provide us as women in the traditional sense. Could be that roles are switched. I'm talking also from a masculine, feminine energy perspective. So if you're not, in a traditional relationship, that's fine. You can still apply what I'm talking about. But we need to honor what are the strengths and weaknesses of our partners. And if there's someone that can't have those longer conversations, but you do have this strong soul connection with them and you grow with them in other ways, then be sure to just have sensitivity around, what stories you tell your girlfriends versus what stories you want your partner to really sit and listen to you on, because a lot of those details, they really don't care, and they already have probably a really great solution. So I like to call them all shades of gray. Men are very black and white, and women, we just love to talk about all the shades of gray. So be a little careful there in respect of the masculine and what they offer and how they approach things. But if they're not interested to listen to you at all, then that's a huge red flag, and they're just not interested in you. They're not interested in who you really are. And if they're asking you questions and then they don't really seem to acknowledge what your answer was or your contribution to their question, then I would just really feel into that. Again, I'll say there's a big difference when we approach these things from our head, our thinking mind, versus our heart. Our body never lies. Heartbreak is a little bit slightly different, and I'll talk about that a little bit more because it's oftentimes very much attached to an attachment. But when we feel into our heart, like, how is this person making me feel when I'm having this conversation with them, or when they're not hearing me or they're not listening to me, then number one, you need to be sure that you communicate to them, hey, when I communicated this to you and then you didn't have any acknowledgement of my contribution, it made me feel X, Y, and Z, right? So you're communicating what the situation is and how it made you feel. Now, if at that point they seem to not care, then you're definitely not in the right relationship. You need to be able to have that open communication. It's the only way relationships work. Unfortunately, if we don't build those communication skills early in a relationship, they are so much harder to get back later because we get so ingrained in these patterns that we have with loved ones in our life, right? Even if it's a friend, we kind of build these relationships and we sort of know where the triggers and the buttons are. And then we just kind of keep going for those places and those spaces. And so we want to get to the place where we can uncover, like, why am I asking you to play this role for me? Why am I asking you to ask me questions and then not value my response? And if you get to the core of it and you figure out that that's just not the right person, then move on. If you get to the core of it, then they're going to stop doing it, right? Because it's so hard, but we have asked them to do these ridiculous things to us. And it's all for us to be able to go deeper into ourselves and either cut them loose or get the lesson and go deeper with them. So I think that answers that question. But if not, I'm always happy to get more in the chat. Okay. So please, if you're listening live or you're listening on the replay, or you're someone else that didn't ask the question, but you have another question that feeds off of that, don't hesitate to put it in the chat here on YouTube Live. Okay, I'm going to go down to the next question, and that is relationship issues. My son is almost 14 and does not want to spend any time with me. I'm sorry for the laughter, but I realize that as the mom, I do need to separate more than my husband, but it's breaking my heart. Summer is almost over, and he spends most of his free time at friends' houses. I miss the days when we enjoyed each other. Lots of stuff comes through here. Again, I don't know all the details about this particular situation, and admittedly, I do not have my own children in this lifetime. I have a fur baby, Miss Lily. She gives me lots of fun and challenges, but nothing like a teenager at 14 would. But I think there's some real themes that go on in life, and that is that as a parent, you are a parent, and you're probably in a lot of cases not going to be cool, especially at 14. But they're always going to be reflecting back to you something about yourself that you want to see deeper, because they're so close to you and they pull on your heartstrings so tightly. There's juicy nuggets in there. So beyond the obvious that most teenagers do not think their parents are cool and that you cannot say or do anything right, the only thing you can do is really control that heartbreak. And maybe control isn't the right word, but you want to be able to not be in the heartbreak of, because I can feel the pain just reading it. It's like, you just want that connection. And I think, one of the things that we're always called to do is what we love the most, we need to set free. And so maybe there's a question here for you as to what are you sort of, I don't know, I don't like this word, but sucking off of your son's life cord, right? Like, what is it that you are trying to get from him that you don't feel within yourself? Some level of acceptance. Oftentimes that's what kids are teaching us, right? Like, they're showing us all of our wounds, or showing us our own insecurities, our own things that we're dealing with in our hearts. So, what is that? Because as we know, a lot of times, just in general in relationships, when we really want someone to hang out with us, there's sometimes this and then we don't get the same response. But when we're like really solid in who we are and what we want and what we're doing, then other people suddenly want to hang out with us, right? But when we kind of have this this vibe about us that we need them or we want them, especially kids, then they want to back away even more, right? It's like that. You say something and then they want to do the opposite. It's kind of that same energy. So I think that, at 14, there's a lot happening for boys, especially about freedom. And being a mommy's boy is not something that they want to do. So are you being a boy's mommy? I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, are you trying to still be that motherly figure when your child is clearly telling you, like, hey, like, I'm a kid, I'm a teenager. I got my own stuff going on. Like, I want to have my independence. I don't want to be with you, not because he doesn't like you, but because he just needs to start creating who he is on his own. And or maybe in addition to or separately, you're more needy of him and he doesn't want that. He doesn't want a mom that's needy. He's like, let me go. I want to be independent. I want to do my thing. So I think there's a lot of stuff at play. And then of course, everyone has their own individual, like, spiritual contract with their child. And so that's very unique to you and your child. But what I would say is just always remember that your child chose you and you chose your child. So coming into this lifetime, that was an agreement you guys had as a soul contract. And the best thing you can do is always focus on, like, what are all the lessons? So go deep in that and see, what is something that is really hovering there for you to learn about yourself and play with it and have fun. Like, if I do something a little bit different, like, how are they going to react? I know, playing off of this question, a conversation that I had with a friend was their child was saying, well, you're not spending time with me. And they're like, okay, this is like what I've been saying to you. Like, why are you saying this now to me? And I'm the one that's sitting here saying, like, I want to spend time with you. And I think what comes to me about that is that potentially you have projected guilt onto them for them not wanting to spend the time with you. And so now what they're doing is kind of just turning the lens back around and being like, yeah, and now you're not spending time with me, right? So it's kind of this energetic, like, that no, you want to get rid of it. You want to nip that because that's something that is only going to keep going around. And the word guilt keeps coming forward in that particular situation, in this conversation that I had, is so stop projecting guilt onto your child and they'll stop projecting it onto you, because it's something that they're learning from their interactions with you or something in the family dynamic. And so I think the minute you stop making them feel that way, they'll stop doing it to you, because it's sort of like they're trying to equal out. I mean, the word karma comes to mind, but obviously it's all in the same lifetime, so it's not exactly karma, but they're trying to equalize what you're putting onto them by throwing it back to you. So hopefully that helps as well. All right, let's go to the next question. Okay, let's see. I moved to a small town 7 years ago, and I'm still trying to find friends. I thought I had a group through my son's town baseball team, but it didn't pan out. Trying to find friends, not through my son, but town feels cliquey. It also plays into outsider syndrome. Well, part of me says to go to a new community, but I know that's not always possible. Even here, I know when I moved to this beautiful little beach town in California, granted it was also COVID when I first moved here, it was really hard to get in because everybody was in pods coming out of COVID. And so it was just really, really challenging. And then events weren't happening, and it was hard to just find ways to meet people. And so I think you may have to consider other communities. You may have to consider, like, if you can't move, which is probably the most likely situation, that you can't just uproot your whole family, and nor do you probably want to, but find, that group that is that, and maybe it's not even a group, just that one person. And you've probably been searching, because I get this like 7 years, and I too have gone through this myself. So um, it's finding a couple of people and then just really putting the energy out there that you would like to connect with them, because chances are they already have their strong network of people. And so sometimes we feel like the outsider because we are, but they aren't necessarily seeing it because they're so used to having their support system. They haven't probably had an experience. I'm saying they and making broad, general, sweeping statements, but a lot of times people who have been in the same community for a long, long time don't know what it feels like to move to a new community. They don't know what it feels like to be the new girl on the block that doesn't get invited. And as we're in our more mature years, meaning that we're not in college where it's super easy to make friends because everybody's in flow and movement and everybody's in a new situation, right? That's when we made some of our like really, really great friends. And I think we all long for that as adults. We have to create those situations where we just keep going out there and keep asking people. And when we don't feel the vibe, just move on to the next one, right? Like, don't force anything. I know for me, sometimes I'll invite someone a couple of times, and then it's like, oh, you know what? If the energy's not there, I'm just going to keep going to the next person. And I also do a lot of long distance calls. My friends and my coffee time and my meal time oftentimes is on Zoom, as much as I would much prefer to have a real life coffee or a real life dinner or sip of something with someone. A lot of times I do it via the phone or online, because that's the way for me to connect with people that I know are at a similar vibration to myself. So don't limit yourself. I mean, we've all like now completely transformed like how we interact with people with the last couple of years. So keep that in your personal life as well, not just your business life, and find ways to just connect. And maybe it's that you put together your own little, happy hour or coffee hour or something with some of your best friends. And maybe it's once a month, or maybe it's once a week. Maybe it's that you create a mastermind. Maybe you create a mastermind that is specific for business, or you create a mastermind that's specific for friendship, love, and belonging and communion, right? Like maybe it's just a communion and community mastermind, where we just go to raise our oxytocin levels. We don't have to have a goal other than, hey, maybe you pick, I'm going to share one thing I'm really grateful for, and I'm going to share one thing that I'm really struggling with. And then you have that fine balance of like the abundance that you have in your life, but then you're also like, oh, but there's this one thing that I'm not quite getting. And so I would suggest trying to do something like that online, and something that feels, more stable, and something that you can count on. Because I think that's the other thing, is that loneliness creeps in when we feel like we don't have people to count on, that are, close to us in our realm. So hopefully that's helpful. And of course, if any of the callers have any questions that they, or any thoughts or ideas that they want to add, by all means, put them in the chat. You may have all struggled with this as well and have some good insights. So, okay, let's see here. This is where my questions got a little mumble jumbled. I am a gay man, married, and my family has accepted me for the last several years and my lifestyle. However, I continue to get challenges, specifically from my mother, who seems to say one thing, but then says something completely different the next day. It's super frustrating for me. I don't know how it's possible that she can't 100% support me, as opposed to potentially her political party or other ideas that people are talking about. So this one's a tricky one and a tough one, and yet it's probably super easy all in the same breath. What I mean by that is that we have societal norms, right, that are now becoming much, much thinner, with everything that's happening with rights and awareness around sexuality and transgender, right? There's so much happening right now. So it's a beautiful time where on one hand, someone might say, oh, it's a confusing time. Nobody knows, who they are, what they are, and they have this anatomy. And I like to come at it with a lot more sensitivity, because this is always about masculine, feminine energy within us. And I think people who are coming forward with a different gender orientation that's not as, typical in our social constructs, based on our body types, that it's providing us an opportunity to expand our consciousness and open our minds. Maybe you don't agree, and that's okay. We don't need to argue about it. We need to find the things that we are similar on, right? What we're similar on is our need as humans and our desire as humans to be in connection with others. So when it comes to your mom, if it's possible for you to try to set aside some of the things that she may say that are insensitive, some of the things she may do that are just super frustrating, if you can set them aside and go to the love, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartbreak. And I just have this feeling that you are the more conscious, ascended person. So if you can just find a way to love her unconditionally, share your feelings, your thoughts. So when she says something that hurts you, it doesn't mean you just don't say anything. No, you say something. Mom, when you said this, it made me feel this way. Because a lot of times people don't know. They don't have the awareness to think, oh gosh, when I said that would make someone with this orientation feel this certain way, right? They don't know, because they don't have your orientation. They don't have your lens. So the more you can communicate, and if they are not able, mothers are hard because we love them and they gave birth to us, and we want to keep them in our lives. So sometimes we have to reduce our time with them. Sometimes we have to reduce the topics that we talk with them, right? So that we can keep the relationship, because I think that it's always valuable to keep our soul family close to us and our biological family close to us if they're not destructive to us. If they get to a place where they're destructive and they're chipping away at our soul, then those are the difficult moments to cut loose. And I don't feel that energy here at all. I think that this is a situation where you're being called. You've asked her to, poke in there a little bit and get some things riled up within you to just see, like, where is your level of confidence with who you are, how you feel about things, and your potentially your desire that you may have to really to be a spokesperson for your community. I don't know if you feel that way, but I think whenever we feel different and we feel like, and I'm not saying you're a unicorn, but I know a lot of times I can feel like a unicorn for other reasons. And when we just feel different, we don't feel understood, or we feel misunderstood, communication is always the way to go back to a neutral state, but it's with discernment, because sometimes our words are not going to come to a reasonable place. So you have to use the discernment around what you communicate from a very high level, not from a stubborn level, not from a childlike level of, well, then I'm not going to talk to you about it. No, it's more about how you deeply feel within your heart. When we speak from the heart and when we're vulnerable, we build connection with others. But again, use your discernment, because sometimes people don't deserve our vulnerability, right? So really feel into the conversations. I think that you're going to make leaps and bounds difference when you just really let go of the idea of what you want your mom to be for you, and let her be her, and love her for all her inadequacies or whatever it is that you feel her, her ways of communicating that are not very nice and not very respectful. It doesn't mean that you accept them all. It just means that you allow her to be her. You communicate who you are, and know that Spirit's got this. Love has this, that it's all going to be a lesson that you've asked for and a lesson she's asked for. And we never know when this stuff clicks for people. Sometimes, we go to our graves and things don't click. And sometimes we go, we wake up one day and we go, I get what that person was saying. Doesn't mean you always agree, but you're like, I get the perspective of where they're coming from, right? So that's hopefully some good tips for you. If you want more guidance on that, or you have some additional thoughts, please put them in the live chat. Happy to answer them. Okay, let's go to the next question. I scheduled a trip with a friend and her husband, and I was very excited to go. At the last minute, a new partner of mine decided to go and attend the trip with us for a short amount of time. My friend was not happy with this, and it ended up in us almost canceling the trip. Now I'm not sure what's really going to happen. Do you have any advice as to what you think I could do to make sure that everything goes smoothly with my friend and with my new partner that I've invited? Okay, well, a lot of vagueness here in the sense that I don't know the details, but what comes to mind is honoring the commitment that you made with this friend at the get-go. So whatever that was, that it was going to just be you guys, you and her husband, or whoever was originally planning to go, and knowing, because I get that you want this partner, this new partner, to be there. It's how you approach it with this person. Because there's already an agreement as to what this looks like, and people are dreaming into what this is going to be, dreaming into what they're going to do with you, the time they're going to spend with you. Girlfriends are always protective of girlfriend time, often, most of the times. And so bringing in a new person, especially a romantic partner, can just rock the boat a little bit, right? Because now they don't know what you're like with them. Oh, is it going to be awkward? There's all of these questions. Now, I like to think that I'm pretty flexible when it comes to situations like this, even last minute. I'm not always, because I do the same thing. I have an idea of what the trip is going to be, but I like to just open it up and go, oh, wow, new possibilities. There's someone new coming. But a lot of people can't really do that right away. They've got to go through their own process. And so if you sit and hold the space with your friend and say, here's what I know we agreed to. So you acknowledge what you agreed to. And here's what I really want to happen now based on these new circumstances. These things happened. I have a new partner, and I'd really love for you to meet him. And I'd really love to have this experience with all of us together. And I know that wasn't the original plan. Having that kind of conversation, and maybe you did that, but having that kind of conversation puts it all out on the table of like, I recognize that this might be sticky, or I recognize that maybe this isn't what we agreed to, or maybe this isn't going to be your dream of this trip, and I'm changing it. So feel into the other person's feelings. Be really clear about what yours are as well. So I'm not saying sacrifice your own feelings for theirs. I'm saying to just really enter this gently, because there's no reason for it to all fall apart. Like, we don't need the wheels to fall off of a great trip that was planned. Asking maybe like, well, would it be okay if this happened? And how would you feel about this? I mean, yeah, in the back of your mind, you still have like what you want to happen, and communicate that in a soft way, right? So I think it's all about how we communicate too, that can either set off alarm bells or can make someone feel like, oh, okay, yeah, oh, I get it, like there's something new happening for you, and I want to support that. But if that person doesn't feel like their situation was honored, sometimes that can be difficult. So I would say hang in there. I would say that while on the trip, take that same advice, meaning feel into your friend. Like, hey, how are you feeling about this? Like, how are you feeling about, this person joining? And hey, on the side, in the bathroom, when the girls go to the restroom together, what do you think? Are you okay with this? And again, not from a giving away your power perspective, just from a like, hey, I love you, and I want this trip to be great for both of us. And I recognize that I switched it up a little bit. Like, I changed, what we were going to do. And see how receptive the person is. And even if they're grumpy, let them be a little grumpy for a little while. And then you can also say, look, like, we got to move through this. Like, I don't want the trip to be about being grumpy the whole time. How can we switch the energy? What can I do? What can you do? Let's work it out. So again, communication, right? It always comes down to that. But I think it's sharing how we feel, and acknowledging how the other person feels. And it also depends. I don't know how long this relationship is that you have with your friend. If it's a long one, chances are you guys have a lot of history, and there's more at play than just this particular situation. So we want to remember that too. If it's a new friend, then hey, you're setting some real foundational elements, and it's important that you want to get off on a strong foundation. So please just feel into theirs, feel into yours, and find that common ground. I know you can do it, and you will, and hopefully you'll come back on next week's show and tell us how it went. All right, let's see. I'm going to check the chat. Okay, let's see. I know I have one more question here, but as I said, I had so many that came in. Let's see if I can get it here. Well, I don't know if I can find that last question. Okay, here was one. I think this actually was one I didn't cover last week. And this one is, why is it so important that we do a cleanse diet prior to a psychedelic ceremony session? There may be a lot of mixed reviews on this. I'm going to tell you what I know and what I've experienced. When we're clean meaning we haven't eaten meats, we haven't eaten alcohol or drank alcohol, when we've given our body a break, there's the element of the physical body, the vibration of meat and the vibration of whatever's happened to the animal. There's a lot of things happening there that if we can just clean ourselves out, we know that there won't be interference. There's some just like gut stuff, right? Like just the fact that our gut has a harder time processing protein. And so giving our gut a break prior to a ceremony helps the energy move through us faster, right? So forget about all the energy from the animal. Just like think about the energy coming through you in a ceremony. You want to be as clean and clear of a vessel as possible. Now, when it comes to alcohol, alcohol is an aura, I want to say an aura breaker, an aura opener. And so you would be better off to not have alcohol prior to a ceremony, just so that you can keep your vibration high. You want to be able to take in things that are easy for your body to clear and cleanse, because you're also taxing your liver. And depending upon what kind of ceremony you're doing and what kind of plant-based medicine you're doing, oftentimes that plant is working through your liver, clearing and cleansing you at a cellular level. So if you can just give it a little one up prior and not have had other substances that your body has to work hard to cleanse out, that's also a really great reason why you wouldn't want to have alcohol prior to going in. Things like dairy, that would be, in my mind, very much a clogger, meaning that you could come into a ceremony constipated, which you really don't want to do. You want to let that shit go. And if you can do it before the ceremony, then again, you can just move so much more energy through your body. Also, there's a lot happening with the receptors in your gut and your brain. So, we all talk about gut instinct, the second brain of our gut, and that connection to our brain. And so that can have a real impact on our ability to have our receptors communicating and helping us to experience things in other realms, to get transmissions, to bring the light through at a cellular level. So I talk about these also in my psychedelics resource guide you can find on bethbell.me, the 12 top things to know before signing up for ceremony. And if you've done ceremony, it still has a wealth of knowledge and insight, lots of resources in there, and information on companies and legal status. And so there's lots of good, juicy stuff. Some people don't abide by any of those rules when it comes to a cleanse. And again, it depends upon what kind. I know if you're going to ayahuasca, the grandmother, which is the sort of the nickname to ayahuasca, she will definitely have a word with you in the ceremony. I would not recommend it, but for some, they are able to go into other medicine ceremonies and be really grounded and be really present and still have an amazing ceremony. So I will always leave it up to the individual and I'm here just to shine the light and to provide insights, wisdom, and knowledge based on my own lens and my own personal experience, and whatever spirit is guiding through me to channel to share with you on this channel. So I think that's all the questions we have for today. I might have had a few more, and I apologize if I didn't get to them. As I said, I had a little bit of a clunky start this morning, so I will for sure go back through, and if I've missed anything, I will answer them next week. Please, if you're listening to this on replay, just write me on the chat any questions that you might have or clarity that you want to any of the questions that were posed today. I so appreciate you. Subscribe, hit the bell. We'll be notifying you of future shows every Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. I can't wait to have you on. I can't wait to hear your questions, and I can't wait to join with you in love and appreciation as we help humanity ascend, helping them to transform relationships to love and life, and ultimately unraveling your mind so that you can live in bliss and not chaos. So join us next time, and I look forward to seeing you again.